big little recipe is one of my family's all-time favorites. It's perfect for parties, total signature for my grandma. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. This way you can get even more recipes that you and your family will love. Today we are going to be making what my family calls mushroom puffs. They are bite-sized, very flaky on the outside, like cream of mushroom soup on the inside. They are so good, and you can never eat just one. And to make them, we only need 5 ingredients. Baby Bella mushrooms, yellow onion, all-purpose flour, heavy cream, and puff pastry. Our very first step is chopping up our mushrooms and our onions. So you want these in a pretty fine dice. A lot of people will discard the mushroom stems. I don't like doing that because once you dice them up finely and saute them, it's pretty indistinguishable from the rest of the mushroom. And I figured, like, why would we throw out all that delicious mushroom flavor? Chopping the mushrooms takes a minute. I'm pretty sure that my grandmother actually uses a food processor for this step because she's very practical. So if you want to do that, do that. It'll go a little bit faster. So now that we finally chopped the mushrooms, we are going to finely chop some yellow onion. I call for 1 medium. My grandma actually calls, our family recipe card calls for 1 small, but I really like onion, so I increased it a little bit. If you don't have 1 medium, 2 small works great. So I have a pan over like medium-ish heat, and there's no beating around the bush. This is a lot of butter. And when I looked at my family's recipe card, I was like, that's way too much butter. Like, no way. But it's good. It's gonna make everything better, and it's worth it. Also on my family's recipe card, it says like saute the mushroom and onion until like all the liquid is gone. There's no mention of heat. There's no mention of timing, which I actually think is a really cool way to write recipes. You know, just saute it until the liquid's gone and it'll be fine. I'm gonna let the butter completely melt here, and then I will add the mushroom and the onion at the same time. So it looks like a lot of vegetable matter when you get started, but within like 10 minutes, it's gonna be really cooked down, and then we will season it with salt and pepper. I don't like doing salt at this step because our whole goal is for the mushrooms and onions to release their liquid and start to stick to the bottom of the pan and brown just a bit. So salt draws out the liquid. It'll kind of like make that process take a little bit longer. So our mushrooms have been going for like 8 minutes, and they are starting to stick to the bottom of the pan. There's like no more liquid coming out from them or the onions. At this point, I'm going to season with salt and pepper. So I'm gonna do like a couple pinches of salt, some pepper. I like to be pretty generous with this here because the puff pastry is really buttery. The cream is nice and rich, so seasoning really well balances everything out. So I'm gonna stir that in to kind of wake up the pepper a little bit. Now I'm going to add my flour. So this acts as a thickener. I'm just stirring it for like a minute or less to cook off the raw flour taste. You have to stir it pretty constantly so it doesn't get like too sticky to the bottom of the pan. And now that the flour is incorporated, I'm going to add my cream, which honestly, when I got this recipe from my grandma and I talked to her about it, I completely forgot. Didn't process the cream was actually in these mushroom puffs, which I've been eating for decades. But it makes so much sense because this is why they're so good. Just brings everything together. And you can see those bits? We can scrape those up because all those browned bits are lots of flavor, and we want that in our mushroom puffs. So I'm just going to stir this mixture for like a minute or two. It's already forming like a thickened sauce kind of situation. It's almost like turning into like one blob, which is great. And I'm making sure to get all those bits stuck to the bottom. Once the mushroom goes in the puff, there's no going back. You can't make it saltier, you can't make it pepperier. So we really wanna get it right now. I'm gonna give a tiny bit of taste. We need more salt. Would you believe it? Is it not salty enough?
Oh, it's great.
Great. Okay, so our next step is getting our mushroom filling in the mushroom puffs, but this hot filling would totally compromise the puff pastry. So I am spreading it out on a tiny little sheet pan, and that's gonna help it cool much faster than if it was sitting in this hot skillet. And if you want to go even faster, which we do, we're gonna put it in the fridge or the freezer. I am going to get our puff pastry all ready. So this is just store-bought puff pastry, comes in sheets. And we are going to roll these out very, very slightly just to get them a little bit thinner. So, oh, wow, flour everywhere. Right now they're like, it's like a 9 by 9 square. We're gonna roll them into like a 10 by 10 square. So just get them a little bit thinner. That way we can get even more mushroom puffs and they have a nice delicate shell. So I'm just gonna sprinkle the bottom with flour, and there'll probably be some creases in the puff pastry. If those start to tear at all, you can like just dab your finger with water, run that along the seam, and that will help it kind of all stay together. You want the puff pastry to be rollable, obviously, but keep it still as cold as possible because that is going to help the mushroom puffs be really flaky if the dough is really cold when it goes into the oven. So I am just cutting like roughly 2-inch squares. Like in theory, you should get about 50. If your puff pastry square ended up being a little bit more like rectangular, like one of mine did, maybe you'll get a little bit less or more. Don't worry about it. You can stretch them however you need. What I do is I take a teaspoon of filling, bring up 2 corners, then bring up the others, do a little pinch, plop that guy in there, and that's it. You don't have to be too fussy about the way that you close the puffs because the goal is that they're actually just gonna burst open in the oven and you can kind of see the center coming out. It looks really pretty. So these mushroom puffs are one of my favorite things that I've inherited from my grandma. Every time I make them, I'm brought back to all these warm family memories of getting together. Let me know in the comments what's a recipe that makes you think of your family and brings you a lot of happy memories. I would love to hear about it. So I'm going to bake 1 tray of the mushroom puffs, form the rest of these little guys, stick them in the freezer. And then when Justin and I want like a few mushroom puffs as like a pick-me-up snack, or to go with a bowl of soup for dinner, or to like throw on salads like croutons, you can just bake them right away. And it is a really nice treat, even if you're not having a party. So I had baked another tray of mushroom puffs in the same exact pan, and it didn't work because Justin ate one of them when I wasn't looking. This is what they look like when they're done. Look how pretty they are. So you can see that they split open, which makes everyone look a little bit different, which I really love. That you can tell they're homemade, and you can see the delicious mushroom filling kind of jumping out of everyone.
It is delicious.
It's it's delicious. Should we both try one? The mushroom filling, it's still nice and creamy, but it's not soupy, like it's not going anywhere. These are great at room temperature. They are really, really nice warm. They're also really nice right out of the oven when it kind of burns your mouth, but it's so good that you don't care.